welcome. You have just tuned in to the South Star Classroom. We are so excited that you have chosen to spend this time with us. I am Jubilee. We got Omar Yanar. We got the Doc, Charles Cole III, and David Castillo here in the house. And how are you?
Mhm.
I'm passing the ball to David first. How are you? Let's do check-ins.
All right. I'm doing well. Glad to be here again. We are we're just coming back off of a little bit of business and pleasure travel to the great state of Florida, where it was incredibly warm, and we've come back to rainy and soggy San Diego. So there you go.
Yeah. Yeah. Florida was beautiful. It definitely was beautiful.
Y'all see DeSantis down there? Y'all give him a shout out.
We did not see him, but we were at one point. I was about a mile away from Mar-a-Lago, so that's my claim to fame.
You were supposed to keep running. You were supposed to just go that extra.
Yeah, sure.
You got 2 more miles on your run.
I was looking around. There were all these unmarked vehicles around me, kind of circling me. So I headed back to. I headed back. Yeah.
Oh man, David, that sounds like it was your moment. It was your moment.
Yeah, that was the moment.
Just roll up there and say what you got to say. Maybe next time we'll do it together.
Next time, yeah.
Next time. Thank you for sharing. Omar, what's up with you?
Do it together. We do planning some kind of weird ass 5K down to Mar-a-Lago. Shit,
but Charles got real quiet. Like, I don't know about that.
I mean, we're talking about organizing today. I guess that's like your organizing effort, man. Listen, like I ain't running no 5K down to Mar-a-Lago. Although Florida's a nice time. February is a nice time to be in Florida because
it was beautiful.
I was there. Oh man, I've been there in like July. I'm like, what is anyone doing down here at this time, man? Like, I didn't see anyone outside in July in Florida except for the alligators, and even they were like not about it. Speaking of fine weather, El Paso looks like Dune or like Tremors. It's the drought plus all these storms have kind of percolated into this post-apocalyptic Mad Max-like atmosphere in El Paso. I need to send you boys and Jubilee a picture of what it was like out here because it looked like some kind of like 21st or excuse me, like 2100 AD century set of just pure dust in the air, like like it was red and orange outside. It was creepy, and it's been happening, but it's never been this. Like we have wind, but we've never had anything like this before in El Paso. It's pretty crazy, and it's weird because like if you look at the weather app, it not just says, hey, this is going on, like the air quality is at like a 500 of disastrous health levels. I'm like, man, crazy stuff out here. So yeah, I am okay dealing with all the things, both physically and spiritually in El Paso right now. How are you, Drew? You run down to Mar-a-Lago from Maryland?
I just was like putting on my activist hat and thinking that maybe me and Dave could just get some messages out there, you know. But
that's a sitting president right now, so you know
probably wouldn't get far, right? I guess.
No. Watch is the sitting. Don't you know anything that could be considered run down here on for what now? What are y'all little podcast doing?
Right. I mean, I get it. Okay,
don't who's president. You don't want them problems.
I'll just write a letter. It's fine.
There you go.
But I'm doing well. Like we're out here with like some really nice weather today. It's giving like 70s. I had my AC on for a little bit with my Sherling coat in my back seat. So that's what we're doing. We're surfing between 30 and 40 degrees and 70 degrees. And I love it. I'm not going to complain because I'll take all the extra bit of sunshine I can get now that the sun is going down at 7 p.m. instead of 2:45 p.m. like it has been since November. So I have lots of extra joy and excitement. And then district-wise, we've had a lot of talk about, immigration and just helping our migrant families feel safe and come to school and come outside and go to the different community events and all the things because it's, a real issue. And we have down here in Maryland really been like supposed to be a safe haven. And so we've just been spending a lot of time messaging that. And I mean, and that's that. I have 2 teenage boys that are teenagering and they do what they do. And I am still happy to be a Black mom raising young Black kings.
That's what's up. She was terrorizing them poor boys right before we came on. Just giving them a hard time. I'm just like, leave them boys alone, man.
My son told me that he's working out so he can wear no shirt.
What are we doing? What are we doing?
Ladies, that's what he said.
Let the boy work. Stop it. You
gotta wear a shirt. All right.
The young man's being a teenager, fellas. He trying to get, you know what I'm saying? And she just doing mom shit and embarrassing the boy. Let the boy, he only gonna get to have that body one time. Let him enjoy it. It is gone before he knows it. And I think the other 3 men on here can attest to that. So I should have did more of this when I was younger. I'm doing well. I was very happy to get some time with David, man. It was just good to be in community. He rocked it, man, in the work that we had. And we were actually in West Palm Beach, so I didn't know all that stuff was as clustered together, but it was beautiful. I mean, it was, especially flying in from Chicago where it had been cold. We did have a really nice day yesterday, close to 70, but same as you are, Jubilee. It's dancing around 65 and then it's 35. This is like, what are we doing? Like, it snowed last week and then it was 70 degrees. Somebody said hi from Homewood. That's not far from me at all. I'm in Dalton, Illinois. So it's good to hear that. I'm gonna jump us into our work today. And I'm really excited about this episode. So one, I'm back writing. I do have a Substack. Please take a look, go check it out. I'm getting back into writing just to be, back on what I do. And it's easy. It's called the Agentic Papers, but if you just go substack.com at Dr. Charles Code III, it comes right up. This is how I
man, I checked that out, man. You've been asking me for money ever since, man. You've been like,
man, I'm not
up with some cash. And I'm like, I feel guilty because I gotta give you cash.
No, you don't. You don't.
Pay the top. Pay the top. Pay him for writing.
Listen, man, listen. I'm gonna pay this man. So if you join this
there's nothing to pay for yet.
Everyone is like, hey man, he's asking me for some money. Omar Yanar is donating money to Dr. Charles Cole and the Agentic Papers.
Well,
everyone.
Omar, I appreciate you stepping on the product and then lifting it back up. So thank you. I would say
that's what I do. Hey man, the product is 15% cheaper than the last time.
I would say this though, I will fix the settings. I think there's an option for people to pay in. Everything I do right now is for free. So people can just have it. So I will find a way to take that option off. But when I was going through setup, I didn't know that it was going to do that. But you can go there now. It's all free. But here's what we're going to talk about today. We're about to break down some critical issues that's happening in education, policy, and community action. And today we're diving into a conversation that I think that we need to have, one that's just been oversimplified for too long. Martin Luther King Jr. and Malcolm X are just often framed as opposites. But the truth is they were building towards the same goal. Agency. If you know me, you know I love agency. I love not waiting for systems while still pushing systems forward. And MLK, he focused on leveraging the system through mass mobilization and policy change, while X emphasized self-determination and community control. And the question that we're tackling is, what can we learn from their strategies and how should we apply them to like education today? Black, brown, poor, white, whatever, right? And my colleagues are here and we're going to talk about it. But in that piece that I wrote, I talk about the merging of those and why you need both. Are we organizing effectively? Are we building the right institutions? And if MLK and X were alive today, like what would they be saying about the state of education, especially Black education? What would they say about brown education? What would they say about Moms for Liberty? I'm curious. I don't know. I don't have the answers to these things, but go read the article. It's some good stuff in there. But I'm going to start with you all, right? Let's start with leadership of it. Like if MLK believed in working within the system, leveraging policy to create change, and Malcolm X pushed for self-reliance and building outside of it, similar to how kind of Jubilee and I tend to go at it, where one of us talks about the system and one is like, well, I don't know if the system's going to change. I think this is going to be a fun thought exercise for us. So I'm going to start with you, Jubilee. But just in today's fight for educational equity and quality, like which approach do you think is more effective, or do we still need both? just what's your take? I just want to have like an organic conversation with it, right? Like, do you lean one way or the other, or do you feel like they have to be in concert?
I think it depends on the season, but I think we've always needed both, and I think we're always going to need both, because they serve different purposes. When I think about Malcolm X, and shout out to you on your blog, your articles are phenomenal to read, and just very grounding. But like when I think about Malcolm X, like a lot of his stuff was connected to, you know, community empowerment, Black empowerment, consciousness, you know, Black consciousness, and understanding our worth, and building our own, and all of that. And I think sometimes, well, let me just do the other side. So then for Martin Luther King, talking about policy and all that kind of stuff, which then changes things systemically, like we need that too. But I think that sometimes when laws and policies are put in place, and I think I said this in a previous episode, maybe we get a little lazy or comfortable thinking that those laws and policies are going to live on forever and like carry us, when in actuality, right, the law is, it's just a stopgap, because people's hearts and minds haven't necessarily changed at all, right? And so all the law is doing is just stopping them from doing what they are thinking of doing in their hearts and their minds, but it's not really revolutionizing the way people think about people that don't look like them. So, so the short answer is, I think that we need both. They both serve different purposes, and regardless of the changes that do happen, that are positive, new policies and all of that, we still always need to be agentic. We still always need to be building our own and cultivating that within our own communities.
David, I appreciate that. You can comment on hers, or just go straight to the question, but you know,
yep. I think it's
more effective. I know it says Black education, but I'm thinking of it from whatever context you want to go to.
Yeah, I mean, I think in terms of education, you know, the vast majority of young people still attend public district schools, and that's a system, right? And so I think, you know, you have to have a strategy around, you know, an inside strategy around improving the system. And you need also kind of an outside, you know, strategy to, I think, find other solutions, you know, as opposed to, you know, trying to change the system, creating another system, a smaller system, a more independent system, you know, and or applying pressure on the larger system to change, or to what we say is like reform. However, I don't know what the and maybe I'll learn something here in the next 45 minutes, but I don't know what that mix is. I know it's a mix. I don't know if it's a 30-70, a 50-50, a 70-30, because what I do know when we talk about education is that things are not getting better for young people. They're not getting better for Black children, and they're not necessarily getting better for brown children. So whatever the combination is today in 2025, whatever the, you know, the different kind of strategies that are in place, they're not working. So
I got you. That's interesting. I appreciate that. What you thinking? Oh, I'll put the question back up for you.
Man, I get real heady sometimes, so I'm kind of drifting in these two perspectives.
Hold on, you set that up, brother. Let me
yeah.
You that sounded like a dramatic answer coming. Let me give you the screen.
Yeah, dramatic, yeah. I was lucky, man. I did a lot of reading about this back in college, tons of courses on civil rights and civil justice. So, you know, I've read most of what Martin has written. I read most of what Malcolm spoke about, and kind of understand the intersection of what they were trying to do. It got me thinking on these two bents. From an organizing standpoint, I had this interesting postulate, and it came to fruition during COVID, which is, I think that particularly the United States, as active as it was in the 60s and in the early 70s, has acquiesced into complacency. And what I mean by that is, like, think about the organizing efforts that were happening in the 60s and the early 70s, and the extraordinary measures that were carried out as a result. And I think since then, powers that be are like, well, why don't we just distract the people with bullshit in order to keep them from understanding what's going on and from organizing? And if you think about that, like, listen, and I know people love their sports. It's odd because it looks like I'm wearing a San Francisco Giants, and it's actually the San Francisco brand out of San Francisco. Dude, sports are a distraction, right? I'm not saying you don't enjoy them and can't enjoy them, but I'm saying as long as people are distracted with basketball and baseball and football and learning all these stats, they're not thinking and talking about the disastrous things that are going on right now. I have this postulate of like, what if all that went away? What would happen? And we saw that during COVID. Think about what happened in and around COVID, Me Too, Black Lives Matter, the insane levels of civic justice that people were participating in simply because they weren't so distracted by what the hell is going on. And look, dude, it's just me. I don't want to speak on behalf of my co-host, but I think those distractions are on purpose. And so long as we're distracted, we don't organize to actually affect change because, well, the Eagles are playing or because the Bruins are on television. And I got to say, Martin was right in terms of how well he organized effective change to happen if we all just got together and focused on what was actually going on and fighting for our kids. And I had a moment this week where I was like, you know, as kind of an old school liberal, like Bill Maher talks about being an old school liberal, and I would say that I'm like that. I want to identify with everybody. I want to get to know everybody. I want complete integration. I want black and white and brown and everybody hanging out together to understand one another. And I thought, well, that's probably the best way. So how do I feel about this Malcolm idea of, you know, self-efficiency? And then I'm like, well, am I a hypocrite? That's literally what I'm doing in my schools. This is a school primarily for Latinos. Everyone's welcome, right? But it was created for Latinos by Latinos in a very Latino town, led by Latino teachers, led by a minority majority board. I mean, like, I am literally putting into place exactly what Malcolm talked about, and it's working. So I can't wait to dive more into this because I'm processing and thinking as I'm talking during this show versus having, like, I don't know, talking points today. So I got to tell you, like, I'm still a little at odds about, well, I want one thing, but I'm doing the exact opposite and exactly what Malcolm says to do. But in that respect, shouldn't we? Because who the hell else is looking out for us?
Yeah, that's what's up, man. I think that was a good answer. I think I heard a lot of what you said in there too. I think you do need both, and I think there are ways that you do it. And I know there's another question that talks about what that strategy might be or what they would think about the system now if they were here. But I look at it like you got to find people that and let them do what they do. If you have somebody who's a natural disruptor, then feed that for that person. And if you got somebody that's calmer, that kind of is like, this is how you work within a system, you need both. And one of my favorite books is Spook Who Sat by the Door. It's a very, very the level of discipline it takes in that book. I don't know if y'all have read it before. I think you would love it if you haven't. It is it can be a difficult book to find, but basically, has anybody here read it all? Because okay, cool. It's about this young light-skinned black dude, which is important, who had did basically everything right, and he wanted to make sure his people had justice. So he started working for the government, but he was a double agent for us. And it just talks about the different things that you get tempted with, and how that preparation. But he was so disciplined in how he did it. It's a book that's probably been banned from some places, which should probably make you want to read it some more. But it's a very, very it's an inspirational book. It had an impact on me almost to the level that the autobiography of Malcolm X did. That's the most influential book I've ever read in my life, was the autobiography of Malcolm X. It's a book you often read as a young person, and then you've read it. People my age have read it 5, 6, 8, 12 times, because it's like you get something new from watching his metamorphosis. So I think you definitely, they got a movie, and the movie's free on YouTube if you want to just go watch the movie. I think the book is better than the movie, but movies You got to still have some, got to be able to make a movie, but it's a really low budget film. But I think you need both. I think that if David is really good at getting in the system, working with it, understanding how that thing moves, and Omar is the rebel rouser that will go out and do those things, you need those people behind closed doors strategizing and covering each other in different ways. But like, you have to attack from both ways. And if you look at who's been some of the best organizers in history, whether you like them or not, like, you know, I think there's a lot of people that did that. I do think that the nation was trying to do that, which kind of led to some beef with X, right? When they told him, don't comment on JFK. White people love this man. We're not doing that. And he was like, F that. That didn't work out so well for him. But if you look at that Tea Party conservative movement, if you go into me and Omar's territory, they were doing both. They had their politicians up here doing the political thing and fighting on the floor and passing laws, but then they had their crazies out in the streets yelling and showing up at school board meetings and showing up at city council meetings. You have to attack problems like this from multiple angles. I truly, truly believe that. And I think we lose something when we're afraid to do one when we're afraid to do the other, when we're doing one and afraid to do the other. So you might not be able to do it all in your own and yourself, but that's like where the coalition comes in. But I that moves me into number two. And again, we just never get through all the questions, so I'm just making sure we get there. I want us to have free convo, but I do want to hear what you all got to say, because that leads directly into this next piece, which you were alluding to, Omar. So you're on deck. We'll start with you. But protest versus policy. King mobilized mass movements. Malcolm focused on self-reliance, and he did mass movements too. I don't want to discredit him, but are we organizing effectively today, or has something been lost? And I want to put this in there, right? As I come to you, we've talked a lot about Moms for Liberty. We've talked a lot about the conservative movement. We talked a lot about Republicans. We talked a lot about the Dems. We've talked about a lot of different areas, and every side is trying to do organization in their own way. So are we, whatever the proverbial we is, Omar, are we effectively organizing today?
No, like absolutely not. And I'll provide some context. It's funny, man. This is literally what I was just thinking about. What I see happening, and I'll use El Paso as a really good example. Recently, there's a school district, Socorro, big, more than 50,000 kids. And all the school districts in El Paso, and particularly Texas, have had these budget issues recently. So Socorro has gotten a lot of news because they are laying off 300 teachers in order to deal with the budget crisis that they're in, right? And what I saw was both awesome, but to your point, Doc, all these people came out to the school board meeting to protest the firing of these teachers and discuss, hey man, like, you're getting rid of teachers, but look at these like very bloated district salaries, right? And while I want to commend that effort for people to come out and organize and protest about this change, what I think people don't understand is that by the time they got to that school board meeting, that decision was already made. So if you talk about ineffective organizing, the organization should be commended. The timing in which they did so is radically ineffective. And you'd ask, what would you do different? And it boils down to one word, really: lobbying. And what I mean by that is, I think about someone like Mama Toya, right? He's got a group of women, people who are deeply organized, and I bet you $1,000 she's got the right idea. You don't go when the shit hits the fan. You go with your small group and effectively start talking to the policymakers and those who can effectively make change way beforehand, to be like, we're from the community. These are things that you may not know about. We have this small group, but this small group represents hundreds, if not thousands, of people in the community that feel this way. And it's not a threat. It's more like, here could be the repercussions if this happens. So why don't we talk right now about solutions that you can go to with your team, I can go to with my team, and we work collaboratively behind closed doors first in order to move this forward. And I got to tell you, that adds a lot of ammo to the arsenal, because if you had those discussions and then they kind of do an about face and they decide to do something radically different, then you exercise, well, now we're bringing in thousands of parents and we're bringing in these conversations that you had, the false promises that you had, and now we're applying pressure. The thing with organizing today is that the decision's already made, then they apply pressure. And that's the wrong formula. You apply pressure immensely before the decision is made in comfortable spaces behind closed doors. That's what Martin was doing. I mean, that's effectively, like, I wouldn't say Malcolm was doing that behind closed doors, man. He was doing it real loud, and I kind of liked it, to be perfectly honest with you. But that, in my opinion, is the effective way to organize, is proactively with decision makers instead of protest after the decision's already been made.
Mm. Jube, I had you on deck.
Yeah.
What's your thoughts? And then David, up to you.
I'm going back to what Omar said when he talked about just being like distracted. So I pulled up a quote. Angela Davis said, "You have to act as if it were possible to radically transform the world, and you have to do it all the time." And so I think distraction is what causes us to not do it all the time, with the strength and the prowess and the intentionality, right? And so when you talk about COVID, it made me think about George Floyd and his murder. And it made me think about, that was the first time I went out and protested. And again, protesting may not be everybody's jam, right? But that whole thing that happened with George Floyd and his murder, right? It incited a lot of people. It incited this righteous indignation, right? Black, white, Latino, like it all across the world, not just all across the US, people were outraged. And we had our foot on these people's necks that you need to make a change because this shit ain't right. And so I think we were heard. And so we all know a bunch of stuff came out after that. These different policies, Black Lives Matter this, Black Lives Matter that. Let's put out this anti-racism clause and let's show them all these different Fortune 500 companies. Let's show the Blacks that we care and we don't want to see them killed and martyred in the street like dogs because we want their business and we want them to know that we don't think they're dogs. We care about them, right? And then when I think about what's happened in the past 5 years, right? And not just in terms of after January 20th with all these executive orders, right? But even within the span between 2020 and now, how many things have been repealed or the focus has just been lessened, right? It's lighter in some states. Some of the things that they implemented to address policing and who's getting pulled over and education, all these things have been pulled back some, right? Or the focus has just been softened, right? The intentionality just isn't there. And so I say all that to say, I wonder what would happen if we kept foots on necks. And to your point, Charles, in whatever area we're led to, if you're like Toya, Mama Toya, who's like, I'm gonna learn the science of reading and I'm gonna take these here 13 children and teach them how to read. And this one's over here, like I said earlier, I'm gonna write a letter. And these people over here, like, well, I'm a protest. And we're gonna keep our feet, we're gonna keep foot on necks. Because yes, we did hear that you responded to the protests and all of that, but that's not all we wanted, right? We need long-term change. We don't just want the alley-oop, like when a baby's crying and you just get the pacifier and the baby stops. You're like, oh, thank God. It's like, no, I don't want you to stop crying. I actually want you to go to sleep so I could get some sleep. And so it's like, let's not stop fighting and let's not stop galvanizing and let's not stop protesting and let's not stop writing and let's not stop singing and let's not stop marching until we get what it is that we are really asking for. And I think that perhaps we stop too short and then people are like, oh, they're good now. And then they move on and we get distracted again until something else comes around. It's like, oh, snap, they still hate us. They still think we're dogs. They still mistreating us. What happened? Because they never changed. They just did something to pacify us and get us to be quiet and move on to something else.
Really quickly, it's such a good point because one of the things that I saw that was super ineffective about Occupy Wall Street was, what the hell did you want? And
Yeah.
I like
It's true.
sorry, man. I don't know if any like if we're on podcast,
You made
Jubilee
me
just did the
spit out
like
my Black
funniest
Girl Magic
thing.
Rosé.
Like that was
They
hysterical,
owe you a
man.
check.
But like that's just my simple point. Like, what the hell do you want? Because like that's ineffective organizing, man. Like y'all had no idea what the hell y'all were doing out there and shit, so you didn't get anything accomplished. That's all I want to say is like, hey, if you're gonna organize, maybe have a very construct idea about what you are trying to accomplish and fight to those ends versus just being like, we out here to wild out on Wall Street and shit.
Right. I got some thoughts on
Occupy.
that, but definitely go ahead, David. Yeah, because I
Yeah.
got some
So
thoughts
we're on
about
question
that on
number
our
2.
latest thing. Yeah, are
Question
we
number 2.
organizing
Okay.
effectively today? Yeah.
Yeah. I think, oh gosh. I think we have to be. So like the question I have is like, who is the we, right? In the data set.
Mhm.
I think if we look at this last, so now like moving up to like, I'm thinking about electoral politics, looking at kind of doing a post-mortem, and figuring out, why it took the Democratic Party so long to shift from Biden, and how Kamala Harris was selected, and how once she was selected, she refused to move or soften or change some of her positions on issues that they knew were going to kill her chances of being elected president of the United States, right? And so I'm looking at your question and I'm thinking about like the kind of the way that the party structures are set up on the Democrat versus the Republican side. So it kind of breaks down to like a political party issue. I think the way that the Democratic Party has organized itself is incredibly patronistic, is incredibly bureaucratic, and it does not allow for quick shifts in strategic thinking, right? Because there's all these platforms and there's these, there's a certain way that, people see the issues, and it takes so much time to actually get any traction to, have the Democratic Party from the local labor organizing hall to, city hall or the state capitol to shift on a particular position, because it's so lockstep. And I think it really put us, in this kind of like strangulation hold, and we are where we are today. The way that the Republicans organized or were disorganized, helped them to be way more flexible and kind of think on their feet. So, on the second question, I think, I'm thinking more like the self-reliance, the independence, thinking outside of the system mindset, I believe would have helped us more, at least as it relates to the last election.
I was taking notes while y'all were talking, because I think y'all said like some stuff that was really dope. Before I jump into it, I do want to make sure we answer or address some of the questions. Mama Toya talked about Dr. Fuller changing her thinking. I actually, for that New Niagara thing, we actually have a video of that process, about 3 minutes, that's narrated by Dr. Fuller, who was somebody that I talked to a lot behind the scenes when I was organizing that. So if you guys want, before we end, I'll show it. It's 3.5 minutes. She also shouted out Sarah Carpenter. She runs the Memphis Lift in Memphis. She's on one of my boards, but she's also like a mother to me, and I'm just part of her family. But she is one of these grassroots people that is really organizing. She don't care what party you from, what type of school you at. If the school is whack, she gonna try to get it up. She gonna get up out of there, traditional, charter, whatever. And if you are a district person doing right by Black kids, she gonna rock with you. So, and she's just a fierce lady, and she's had so much personal loss throughout this. She lost a daughter who was like a really close friend of mine. Actually, the picture behind is right. This is like a few weeks before her daughter passed at her mom's wedding, her mom's wedding reception. So a wedding rehearsal. So I keep this close because this is still very recent for me. Dirk, she mentioned Dirk, who we also lost in this work. And I know Nicole asked about pardoning Derek Chauvin. I will say, and you all can comment on this, that was Ben Shapiro was making that push as a person. I think that the Trump campaign or Trump's team kind of squelched that from the gate. It still may happen or may not, but I just wanted to be clear on if that was coming from that Trump camp or somebody who is just on that side of the fence. Now to this question though, I think I do think that we are not organizing effectively today, and I think that the thing that's missing is I think there needs to be an education piece. You feel me? I think that there's like we got to make sure our people are properly educated on what we're talking about, and they're not just pimping you for your emotional displays. And what I mean is I've been to so many school board meetings, and I've watched as a school maybe about to close or something, and they will parade these black kids and these brown kids up to save said school, and they'd be middle school or high school or 7th grade or 6th or whatever, and then they'd be reading from these cards and they couldn't read, and it was making the point of what was happening, right? And I think things like that, where it's like, make sure we know what we're fighting for. And it was just always heartbreaking to see. I would go up and I was an officer of the district. I worked at the district, but I would go and work with those people afterwards and like, look, I like that y'all are here. Like, but don't be having our kids look crazy. Like, if at the very least work with them, see what they like. Do they know why they're here protesting? Do they understand? I think things like that where we will jump out the window on something and be factually incorrect. And I don't think that behooves us. Now, the feeling and the spirit might be right. And this is where other sides get you. Like, you might have this feeling deep down in your core, like something is wrong here, but you have to do the work to like be educated to know what you're talking about. I would suggest this reading for everybody. I know I'm just giving everybody shit to read today, y'all. My bad. But this is, I don't know how many people actually know that that Huey P. Newton is actually Dr. Huey P. Newton, and his doctoral dissertation is open for everybody to see. And I think it's one of the best things I've ever read. I read it when I was doing my own dissertation, but I read it when I organize anything or just honestly like once or twice a year. It's a quick read, but it just really reminds you what's at stake. It really gives you an education, and it also is trying to ask you. And I'll put the link up so people can have it. I'm gonna put it in it's in the chat. David, can you post it so people can can get it? The reason why I'm pointing to this though is because also a lot of people like to wear this shit like it's some velour, like it's like some Tommy Hilfiger outfit. And when you do this for real, like when you really are working towards something or changing minds or going against a power structure, you have to know and understand when you hit power hits back, and it hits really, really, really hard. And I've seen, and that's why I'm so confused at a lot of this stuff at times, because people be surprised that the power structure punched back. And it's like, nah, man, you're not going up against a dummy. You're not going up. We're not sparring, yo. Like, if you're saying that policing is bad right now, and George Floyd is the litmus that is the catalyst that we're using, yeah, don't be surprised when that side organizes and has some counter stuff, and don't be dismayed by that. And you learn and see who's really, really down for it. And this is a long-winded answer. I'm sorry, I'll cut it here, because I want to show David some love. David is known in Oakland for being a troublemaker, not just with like the opposite side and the unions who try to squelch stuff, but like on our own, on the choice side, because when shit was wrong, he would say shit was wrong. And like, I'm not operating in this. I don't think you should be open. I actually don't agree. And that's what it means to me. If you're going to be like really organizing, you can't just do it because it looks trendy and you want to be a edu celebrity. Like, you can really lose things there. You can lose jobs. You can lose your livelihood. You can lose your freedom. And in some cases, you can lose your life. So I don't think we're organizing the appropriate way. I think we're playing organizing. I think we like to say some shit and do what Omar said, where we're not really asking for nothing, but we get to take our pictures marching. And then they open the door and say, what you want? We ain't got no answers. So I didn't mean to be so long-winded, but I wanted people to get that stuff to read. And also, just know that if you really believe in this, are you willing to lose some for it? And just to stay with you, David, I think that was just great. In the future, like if MLK and X were both here, what do you think they would say about this current education system? And part two of that is how do we apply some of their lessons right now?
Me? Yeah, I would say both of them would, without a doubt, especially considering the number of years and decades that have gone by since their passing, would be disgusted, right? That we have not yet made progress, at least for the vast majority of Black children and brown children that, again, still attend the large systemic district schools. So I think they would definitely stand on the same ground there for sure. I think I think Malcolm would probably more than likely argue, and double down on the need to educate our own, right?
Mm-hmm.
And would through whether it be homeschooling or microschooling or charter schools or independent schools, right? Just like anything but the system, right? Because the system is clearly not producing results. It has not produced results, and it's actually gotten worse in the last 5 years. I think I would love to hear your thinking around how King might approach 2025 state of Black education. I think maybe he I don't know, maybe he think more outside of the box as opposed to trying to work from within the system and organize within the system, because a lot of time has gone by and things haven't gotten better.
Well, you're on deck. I'll just take a quick crack at that. I think just briefly, I think King would also be disgusted. I think he would put a lot of pressure on the church community, the religious community around where are your schools. I think he would highlight the lack of resources they had versus how many we have, and the fact that we haven't not just matched them, but far surpassed them. I think he would be a little annoyed at that. And I also think that both King and X were in the middle of changing when they died. X had just gone to Mecca, came back, and his perspective has shifted to being more multicultural and other people, because when he went to Mecca, he saw all these other people worshiping and praising the same God, and his experience with the nation had kind of changed him a bit. And I think King, which the thing that effectively got him killed, was he was shifting his conversation to be more about geoeconomics, like poverty, poor people. And I think he was going to a place very similar to where Fred Hampton was going, around like this rainbow coalition of all these poor people and what it would look like to actually shift that. So how should education kind of be shifted to make us better caretakers of each other in that way? So I think it would be interesting. I also think that if both of them were alive, I think they would have been canceled and people would have tried to downgrade who they were, because that's just the time we live in. And I think it sucks. So, you still on deck with Jube, you coming up, but that's my quick hit on that. And I can go deeper in my answer.
I mean, canceled shit. They got canceled back in the 60s.
Right.
Yeah.
You see like the young Black people trying to cancel both of them in recent years? It's really sad. I'll send it to y'all off the mic. No, it was really sad, bro. It's really like you really don't know your history.
Yeah, I mean, man, people need to read. Like this. It's like the subtitle of this show is like kids read. People read, like literacy forever, because in reading these texts, you kind of get to the core of what these two were really trying to do. And my quick take is simple. Like, I think Martin, and this is kind of jumping into a future show, so maybe you and I are on the same bandwagon, Doc. I just wrote an article. I'm editing it right now. I'm going to send it to y'all. Dave's going to love it, because it's all about like punk rock, and essentially how punk rock had infuse this ideology of egalitarianism within organizations and schools, and then how to actually do that. So it'll be fun. But leaning into that just a bit, I think Martin would have talked more about the so-called democratization of schools. And what I mean by that is, like, if you're at a school and all you're taught is subjugation, because that's what schools teach, shut up and listen, shut up and do. I mean, like, one of the Doc, you really hit on this note, because like when I was getting my charter and I was out in the state of Texas doing this work, one of the organizing efforts that a lot of these schools did, white leaders parading out their black kids to come sing in front of, like, you know, the Board of Education, and look at what we're doing for all these black kids, and having them like perform. I was a little horrified, because like I love singing and I love this, but it's different for me when I see black and brown people and kids organized black and brown versus like white people parading them out to be like, look at the good that we're doing for the community. It's a little horrifying. And I think that it lies into what I think about the democratization of schools, which is, how are you actually giving these black and brown kids the tools and skill sets to organize themselves? Not even just to organize themselves, to understand what are they dealing with. Because I got to tell you, like, I think these Gen Z kids are onto one thing, which is, Doc, what you're talking about, which is we're kind of on our own. It is the realization that these old codes of, I went to school, I acted right, I did all the right things, I graduated, I should be guaranteed a really good job, I should be guaranteed these things that the American dream has pronounced to us since the 1950s. They're coming out and being like, this dream is more of a fabrication. Well, it's a fabrication because the lies you were told in society and school were just a bunch of conflated bullshit. You weren't told about how the system works. You weren't taught about how the system is rigged. Martin was onto something about poverty, because poverty has truly become, amongst black and brown and white, the greatest level of subjugation that you could possibly ask. Poverty includes surviving. Poverty includes lack of literacy. Poverty includes you're too busy trying to survive to even question the system. And I think Martin would have called for not only how do you get taught and understand how the system works, but how do you guys bring yourselves together to do something about it in the school system to begin with. That should be taught and propagated by teachers and administrators. And instead, teachers and administrators are teaching like feudalistic subjugation, like they're fucking lords and viceroys being like, you're going to do what I say and till the land. And like, how is that any different than what's been going on, I think, societally for a long time? You do all, like George Carlin said, man, middle class, you do all the work, rich do none of it. And the poor are there to scare the shit out of the people to make sure that they keep doing the work. And yeah, I'll touch on Malcolm for a second. I think Malcolm would have been like self-actualization. What is actually going on? Turn on your lights, read, understand how the system is subjugating you, figure out that there are mechanisms to keep you oppressed, keep you down, and figure out what the hell they are first. Just to understand how to live an agentic life. Because if you think that you've got control, you've got another thing coming. And I think Malcolm would have been horrified at like, what is this brainwashing and bullshit going on in schools and society? He would have, the first thing I think Malcolm would have said is like, that phone is the devil. Get the fuck off of it. Stop reading all that social media shit. It's all lies. The news is there to confuse you about what's really going on. Go out, read, and talk to the people, understand what the problem is first. Then you can go out and organize yourself. But if you ain't educated about what the issue is first, then again, it goes back to the Occupy Wall Street people just going out there and being like, yeah, I'm here for the kegger and the bonfire. And yeah, it sounds like a pretty good time. And we accomplished jack shit. I think that's how they reacted, man. They've been pissed, bro. Pissed, Doc.
I think that was I think that was really good. Jube, go where you need to go. And in your response, I'm also going to ask you like how do we apply some of those lessons now? But tackle it from however you like.
I mean, I think they will both say it's piss poor.
Yeah.
That's what I think.
Yeah.
I think I don't know. Today during PD, one of the facilitators was asking like, what's within our sphere of influence and control, and what's outside of it. You know, and I think outside of it, I mean, I think there's things that we can influence, right? But when thinking about the most powerful position, I think is a teacher. I mean, yes, principal is also powerful, but like being a teacher in that classroom and feeling like you have a moral responsibility to make sure these kids can read, do math, and think. Like, honestly, that's all we need you to do. Like, I don't actually care what color you are. I mean, I do, because I know that if a black kid sees a black teacher, or if a Latino kid sees a Latino teacher, they're more likely to be successful, graduate high school, and probably go to college, right? And that's what we want. We want our children, accessing higher education and being able to have access to all the different career paths and jobs, etc. But like, I don't actually care what color you are. If you're in the classroom, can you teach the kids to read, do math, and think? Right? Like, and that's why I feel like it doesn't matter what decade we look at, that just hasn't been happening successfully in large numbers. Right? It has been happening in pockets, but it hasn't been happening in large numbers. And I'm also thinking about just like, I think we can call out many different things. Oh, the SPED. Oh, the children that are acting out. The parents don't care. We don't have enough resources. And I think like, yeah. And the ancestors before us, some of them were teaching in one room schoolhouses with one piece of chalk and a noisy chalkboard. They didn't have anything either. But what they did have was a fire to understand, you know what? No kid's going to come in this classroom and leave worse than they came. At the very least, I need to teach this child how to read, do math, and think. And then everything else will come into place. It's the thing that they hid from us. We don't want them reading. It's the thing we had to fight to be able to do. And so I'm going to make sure that I take care of these students by teaching them how to read, do math, and think. And so, I mean, I was reading Malcolm X's speech. He made a speech like 1963 at the University of California, Berkeley. And he said, our people in the Negro community are trapped in a vicious cycle of ignorance, poverty, disease, sickness, and death. There seems to be no way out, no way of escape. The wealthy, educated Black bourgeoisie, those uppity Negroes who do escape, never reach back and pull the rest of our people out with them. The Black masses remain trapped in the slums. Right? And then he says a bunch of other things. But I feel like in many ways, for different reasons, that remains to be the truth. And I do think that is something that is within our control to change. And I know we talk about systemic racism, which is a thing. We talk about oppression, which is a thing. But I think if you're a teacher in that classroom and you are committed to making sure that these students learn regardless, that they will, right? So I think it's education. The state is piss poor for a lot of different reasons. But I do think that there are more things that we can do in our locus of control that can contribute to the mental health, to the educational wellness of our children.
Yeah, man. I appreciate y'all, and I'm gonna keep my comment. Well, let me not lie. I was gonna say I'm gonna keep my comments short. But
yeah, you're not going to.
Yeah, I'll just show the video. Still, don't have no issue with it. But I think, and I see I'm freezing and stuff. But look, man, it's in what Malcolm said. Like, yo, by any means necessary. Now, like, we gonna teach our kids by any means necessary. I don't think we're using all the means. If that's the case, I don't have an issue with charters or private schools or home schools or school labs that work in conjunction with schools or taking over schools or working in concert, right? By any means necessary. If people used to learn how to read from people who were enslaved who could barely read themselves at the risk of losing limb, and we got internet, I can be on a call with somebody in China right now in real time with less than 2-second lag. Like, you know what I'm saying? We're not doing, and I'll just say it in that way. Eddie Murphy, my favorite comedian of all time, got a skit and I think it was Delirious, or it was one of them, but he got into a fight, he lost. He's rich at this point. And he used to make fun of this. He made fun of it at the beginning, his mom's burger with bell peppers and all that. But when he got his ass beat and everybody was suing him, he just wanted to go home and have his mom's hamburger. And look, we got fancy shit. We got filet mignon. We got stuff that all these other things. But sometimes you just need the love of home. Sometimes you just need the love of what your ancestors had, the things that you took for granted. So I don't know what David's grandparents prepared for him, or what Omar's grandparents prepared for him, or what Jube's, grandmother or great grandmother in Jamaica was like doing to soothe herself. You know what I'm saying? But I do know that I would trade everything I got to be able to be in concert with my grandmother again and listen to those lessons. Well, we get to do that. We have so many wise people in our lineage, whether it's, Dolores Huerta, or whether it's X, or you want to talk about reading? Go read up on Frederick Douglass, yo. Like, go read about the bad. Let me just tell people how bad Frederick Douglass was. Frederick Douglass was traded between slave masters, like one that liked him, one that didn't, one whose wife was teaching him how to read, and then the dude got jealous, beat his slave master's ass, and the slave master was so embarrassed that he never said nothing about it. Learned how to read by watching the white friends that he had and kind of picking up stuff here and there to become a right-hand man to a president that saw him as lesser than a human. Like, don't tell me what we can't do. Like, and I don't think we have to keep begging for these things to happen. You start building your own systems and your own stuff, people want to be part of it. And I've tried to do that in different ways. I want to just do a quick round robin on just final thoughts if people got it, because I don't want to cut that off. But I do want to end with this New Niagara video. It's about 3.5 minutes, but it was such an honor that Dr. Fuller wanted to be a part of it and told me he'd help out in any way. And he actually narrates the video. So we'll just do a quick round robin, and I'll let that be my final thought, and it'll take us out. So, David, let's start with you. Jube, you're on deck.
Yeah, interesting conversation. And it's kind of brought me back to, I want to keep a narrow focus on, I want to answer your question again, your number two question, but thinking about the framing around public charter schools. So in 2025, MLK and Malcolm X have risen, right? And they look around at the landscape. Charter schools did not exist during their time, obviously. And so I think it would be an interesting situation where we might see an MLK who definitely believed in like reforming the greater system and fighting within the system, to say like, hey, maybe, these are still kind of attached to the system. And so maybe we should explore what it would look like, to have, Black run, charter schools, in the community, right? So like a smaller unit of government, but we're still working within the system. I think it might also be interesting to see, what Malcolm X, how he would approach it. He obviously was, an out of the system thinker, but maybe charter schools would be kind of, I think maybe they would gravitate towards one another, right? One closer to the system, and then one kind of moving further away from the system. So I think that, I've just been thinking about that over the last 10 minutes. And then you brought up the name Charles, interestingly enough. And I was thinking too about how sometimes our mindsets and the way that, we think about things can get so complicated with not even noise, but just biased thinking and bureaucratic systems thinking. So somebody like Dolores Huerta, right? A great labor leader, a great leader in the Latino community, but she continues to this day to not support public charter schools in California. Vast majority of students that attend charter schools are Latino students. And it's the same old talking points about taking public money away from public education and labor rights and unionization. I get it. I understand that, that's how she came up to this organization. But I think it's interesting. I think we just need we need fresh eyes on an old problem, right? Because I think when we get eyes that have been looking at the problem for so long, I think it can be very hard to have fresh thinking and kind of out of the box thinking. So I'm not meaning to disparage any of the work that Dolores Huerta has done, but when I hear her talk in California and attack charter schools, it's disheartening to me. My head goes it starts spinning. I don't understand. Yeah. I'm you're a product of the system.
Yeah. Well, I'd rather you go at Dolores than me, but no, I understand it very, very much. And again, I think a lot of our leaders are in that space, right? Because of what they think those things represent.
Mhm.
Oh, well, I think I had Jube up. Jube, your final. I see you writing. You wanna miss? Okay, go ahead. I wanted to give you time. You might have
I
been.
mean, I'm just lifting a couple of things. One, that Malcolm X uh, raised civil rights to being not just about civil rights, but being about human rights.
Mhm.
Two, so I think that would still need to be a thing. That the things that we are asking for and demanding are what we deserve as human beings, right, regardless of our color. And then what I think they both have and what should be raised is that they both had urgency. Like neither Malcolm X nor Martin Luther King stopped. When they were assassinated, that's when they stopped, but they never stopped. And I feel like that is a key lesson we can learn from them, right? To remain urgent and to remain consistent in this fight for equity. And then to your point earlier, that made me spit out my wine, Omar, right? Like we got to learn so we know what we're demanding, what we're asking for. And I think that is also a part of organization, right? Just having those conversations, cross collaborative conversations about like, what do we really want? What are we really asking for? And keep asking. And then lastly, distractions, that word stuck with me, Omar, in terms of like, I think unions could be a distraction. People fighting for jobs, regardless of like how effective they are in teaching our babies to read, write, do math, and think. Like what is going on here? So I feel really just passionate about, again, like I said before, the power of a teacher. And it doesn't matter private school, charter school, public school. Like, and as a matter of fact, charter schools are public schools. Like, and we have a lever that we can use if that charter school isn't performing, right? It's you get the public money, you get autonomy for higher accountability. So like, let's just stop with the whole thing about bashing charter schools, right? Like we can hold them accountable. That's the whole purpose, right? For innovation, for ingenuity, right? That's the point of charter schools, to give our children another way of having a fighting chance to read, write, do math, and think, right? And so that's that. I just think there are, I love the topic. I think there's several things that we could lift. I want the teachers that are standing in front of our children, whether you white, Black, Mexican, Native American, Jamaican, to teach the babies to read, to write, to think, and to do math, like, and to have that urgency, because we are all here and we are all experiencing measures of success because of those that came before us and thought about us, not even knowing us. And we need to pay that forward and do that for those that are coming in.
That's what's up. I think Davis' dog is active again.
Getting excited, man. It's getting
it's usually Jubilee's dog now.
Buddy.
I know. I think she sleep.
Well, you just gotta walk. For my final thought, I'm gonna leave it to Dr. Fuller. But before I do, because just in case I know it's gonna be over time, I want to thank everybody in the chat today. Please share this. Please share it with somebody. Have them read it. Have them listen to it. Share the articles if you can. It would be such a great thing if you could subscribe to that Substack. I promise you don't have to pay anything. Maybe I'll make some kind of paid option where you give me directly. But with that being said, Dr. Fuller, I'll let you take it away. Dave is going to mute himself because the dog is doing a lot. But and Dr. Fuller, take us
away. Initiative emerged as a response
you guys hear it?
to the persistent inequities in the American education system, particularly those exacerbated by the 2023 Supreme Court decision dismantling affirmative action. This decision not only limited access to higher education for Black students, but also underscored the systemic disparities that exist across the entire K-12 education system, where inequitable funding, low literacy rates, and exclusionary practices continue to plague Black communities. Recognizing the urgency of these issues, the Supreme Court decision acted as a catalyst, sparking the creation of what would become the new Niagara Initiative. This 5-city speaking tour was designed to directly engage communities most affected by educational inequities while bringing together educators, advocates, and leaders dedicated to systemic reform. The tour created spaces for collaboration and dialogue, ensuring that those with lived experiences were equal partners in shaping solutions alongside education experts. The initiative draws direct inspiration from the original Niagara movement, convened in 1905 by W.E.B. Du Bois and William Monroe Trotter. The Niagara movement stood as a bold and unapologetic demand during a time when systemic racism was codified in Jim Crow laws. Its leaders rejected accommodationist approaches, championed instead universal suffrage, economic justice, and educational equity. The Declaration of Principles, penned in part by Du Bois, emphasized education as the cornerstone of democracy and the foundation of liberation. Though the movement was short-lived, its legacy laid the groundwork for the NAACP and inspired future generations of civil rights activism. The New Niagara Initiative honors this legacy by addressing modern educational inequities with urgency and community collaboration, recognizing that the state of Black education across this country is abysmal, with low proficiency rates in literacy and numeracy, chronic underfunding, and systemic exclusion. The initiative makes a critical bet. The solutions to these challenges must come from the communities most impacted. Students, parents, educators, and community leaders are the architects of change, working alongside education experts who have dedicated their lives to this cause. The initiative also recognizes the essential roles of clergy, nonprofits, and other stakeholders in creating sustainable solutions. Achieving equitable outcomes and dismantling educational malpractice at the national level will require a unified effort across all sectors. Above all, the New Niagara Initiative embodies the principle of working with the community, not doing the work to the community. Every participant in this movement had an equal voice and an active role in shaping the path forward.
All right. And again, sorry for the I saw it was choppy, but that was from Dr. Fuller. I'm doing 4K on my end, so I think it's making other stuff choppy. But the video is nice. We probably should shorten it, but I think that was us kind of living the principles of both pushing the system while at the same time being like, what are we doing? And putting in a room of just us, and everybody at those tables was of equal. Like we had city representation, we had school leaders, we had CEOs, we had local business, we had clergy, we had parents, we had students, and we need to figure our own shit out, and we need to have a conversation that was just us. And I applaud other groups that do the same thing. And then when we come together and we know who we are, then we can talk about larger goals that we can share and actually ask for something. But that's my final thought. I appreciate y'all so much. Thank y'all for the kind words. I definitely didn't cut you out, Miss Toya. I did not edit this, and there was a lot of there was like 40 interviews. So we got you.
Oh my God.
Grandmas too, and grandmothers. Grandmas, parents mean grandparents. I got you though. It's in the name. But I appreciate you. We got you, and we will see you all next week. Same bat time, same bat station. In the meantime, you all take care of yourselves and take care of each other. God bless.